Meanwhile, if one grows up in an environment where they are constantly encouraged to speak, to take risks, to share opinions, then maybe they can grow into someone who is way more confident than they were before. And so in that moment, I realized maybe I have matured. I have to let go some of those, I can say, negative personality in me and change. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the In Between podcast, in between who I was and who I am. My name is Adindra, or you can call me Dindra, and yeah, let's have a chat. So to start off this is actually the first episode of this podcast. Yes. So to start off with this episode, I have a very simple question. Have you always been this way? I don't think that's something we usually stop and ask ourselves on an everyday basis because we just assume who we are right now is the same as who we've always been this whole time. But the more I started thinking about personality, the more I realized something felt off. Like, personally for me, there are parts of me that feel like they've always been there since a very long time, like they are consistent. However, there are also some parts of me that feel like they have changed over time. So that actually made me wonder, are we born with a fixed personality? Or is it something that we develop, or something that we grow over time? But before we spiral into this conversation and into this topic, let's have the same definition of personality. Personality is basically the pattern of thoughts and emotions that make someone who they are. It affects how they view the world, how they interact with other people, and how they react to things. I also came across an important note that personality is actually not the same as character, because personality is more of our natural tendencies. Meanwhile, character is our values and our choices. It's the underlying pattern behind those. But for now, let's focus on personality. Okay, so have you guys ever felt quiet? Like, let's say you are in a classroom and you feel very quiet. You don't really talk with other people, you don't interact with other people. But once you step outside of that zone, once you go out of that environment, you feel like you are a brand new person when you meet your friends or your closest people. That you guys might feel like you have different sides of yourselves. But that actually doesn't imply that you have become a different person, sorry. It might just mean that you feel safe enough to show a different side of yourself. So even if we act differently in different background or in different situations, there might still be a consistent core underneath us that stays the same. And this is where one of the biggest idea in psychology comes in. It's the nature versus nurture debate. It's basically the question of whether who we are comes from our biology, such as our genetics, our DNA, or whether they come from our nurture, our experiences, like what we go through, how we are raised, our surroundings, and who we are around. Yeah, our surroundings, yes. And honestly, for me, to be frank, both sides, they make sense. But let's start off with nature. There is evidence that personality might begin way before we have to deal with experiences. So psychologists they talk about something called temperament. I've heard this word a lot and I thought it's someone who gets mad easily, but that is low temper or temperamental, which is different with temperament. Because temperament refers to our natural emotional tendencies we are born with. Like the way we respond to things through instinct, like what feels natural to us even without thinking about it too much. For example, some babies might have the natural tendencies to be calm, while other babies they might be much more sensitive or reactive to things. And what's interesting for me is that these kind of differences they can be observed very early in life before someone has had time to be shaped by their environment. So that suggests that at least some part of us, some part of our personality might already exist from the beginning. There's also something called the Big Five personality traits, or the Ocean model. Ocean. O is openness, C, conscientiousness, E, extroversion, A, agreeableness, and N is neuroticism. O, openness implies to someone who is curious, open-minded, and then conscientiousness is organized, responsible. Extroversion, just like extroverted, they are social, they're outgoing, lively, they like to interact with people. Agreeableness is kind and empathetic. Last but not least, neuroticism is emotionally sensitive or reactive. Now, it might sound complex, but actually, no. This model explains or describes personality in a broader area because these traits tend to stay relatively or proportionally stable over time, which might explain why certain parts of us feel consistent. And you guys might think, or you guys might feel like, oh yeah, that's just who I am, because that's me, you know? And if I actually apply it to myself, if I think and reflect on myself right now, I think one trait that has always been me is empathy. Because when I was younger, I remember being really affected by other people, by how other people felt. Like if someone around me was upset or there's a change in their mood, I would sense that, and it can affect my words, my thoughts, and I may be someone who's a bit more careful. Like I am more aware of how come across to other people because I don't want to intentionally or unintentionally hurt other people. But yeah, let's put that aside first because we will discuss about nurture. While nature suggests about natural tendencies, the idea of nurture focuses on how environment shapes who we become over time. Nurture includes everything we experience, such as how we are raised, the people we the people we meet, the culture we grow up in, and even maybe our beliefs, and also the situations we go through in life. For example, two different people might have the natural tendency to be quiet. Okay, to be quiet. However, if one continues to grow in an environment they where it's where they are judged, it's a judgmental environment, and then it's restrictive, then they might continue to grow as someone who's quiet, even way more reserved as they were before. Meanwhile, if one grows up in an environment where they are constantly encouraged to speak, to take risks, to share opinions, then maybe they can grow into someone who is way more confident than they were before. And in my case, about being an empath and all that, I don't think that has necessarily changed a lot because I still feel those things that younger me felt. So maybe I can say that's just who I am. That's just a part of me. However, nurture also plays its part because I've realized that, like, if I constantly put other people first, it becomes really easy to ignore what I feel or what I need, like my own needs. Okay, and sometimes I end up overthinking or holding back just for the sake of other people, just to make things comfortable for everyone else. But to be completely frank, I realized that it has become inconvenient for me. And how did I notice that? Well, yes, through experiences. Because as I grow up, I meet different kind of people, all the good, all the bad. Well, I wouldn't say bad, but different people, different personalities, different viewpoints, different perspective. Yeah, same thing. And so in that moment, I realized maybe I have matured. What about you guys? Like, think about it for a second. Are you the exact same person as you were a few years ago? And let's say if you were put into a completely new environment to stay in, let's say a new country or a new school, would you be the same, or would a different version of you show up? Or maybe a completely new version of you show up? Something like you rebrand yourself or something. So yeah, I'll leave you with that to think. Because I guess for me, even as things changed, that part of me didn't completely disappear. Like, I still am an empath, like I've always claimed, but now it's just to an extent. And my natural tendency didn't completely go away. I just sharpened it to adjust to the reality that I've learned through my experiences and my surroundings. And it does not replace my personality, but it shapes how it develops and how it is expressed in real life. Because I've realized that I have to let go some of those, I can say, negative personality in me and change. So it makes sense why people sometimes say things like, that's just who I am. Because yes, it really does feel that way. And in this sense, personality is not something we have, but also something that is continuously influenced by what we go through. So it, it doesn't mean like you change directly, okay, like this is you, the old you, and then boom, you change into someone new, but you change progressively. But that doesn't really satisfy me because we can't jump into conclusions that fast, okay, guys? It still leaves so many questions, like if who we are is built through experiences over time by our environment and the people around us, then how much of us is actually us? And more importantly, how do we know if we are growing into ourselves, not someone who just fits in or slowly becoming someone else? And I don't know, this might seem like I am trying to make you guys overthink, and maybe there are more important matters to think about. However, I do believe that we don't really see these kind of things until we actually stop and reflect. And I believe it matters more than we realize, because without that awareness, we start to confuse what is natural to us to as something that is just familiar to us. And that's where it starts. Not by having everything figured out, but just being simply aware in the first place. So yeah, this has been me, Dindra. Thank you so very much for tuning in. And please stay tuned, because on the next episode, I will be inviting some few guests which are super interesting. So make sure to watch that one too. And yes, that's just the beginning, y'all. I'll see you guys next time. In between podcasts, in between who I was and who I am.